Go.
Hi, everybody. I am Otter with the Real Women of Gaming. I am in charge of social media. And this is the importance of a session zero in tabletop role playing games panel. And before we jump into this really, really interesting topic, I want to go around and have everybody introduce themselves and tell us about you and where you can be found outside of this convention. Why don't we start with you,
Hold
Jesse?
on. You a person for
Yes.
me.
Hello, everyone. I am Jessie. I am located in Chicago, and I work stream on
Really?
Twitch and YouTube with Cast Gamers. We do therapeutic tabletop games. And yeah, we're a really fun community with doing a lot of work with mental health and tabletop games.
Okay. And we have Menachem.
Howdy. My name is Menachem Cohen, he, they. I also stream of Cast. About how their games can help us answer our spiritual, or at least address our spiritual questions, and maybe find out who we are, why we're here, what makes us come alive. And I'm going to put my website in the chat, which is whatmakesyoucomealive.net.
These two. And last but absolutely not least, we have Timothy.
Hello, I am Timothy Grant. I am the program director at Gaming Approaches Toward Education. We provide therapeutic services for individuals, and we use tabletop games and other geeky other avenues to facilitate therapy. I am also a game designer working on uh, Venture Society. I almost forgot my name of my own game.
Changed.
Yeah, it did change. With Ninth Level Games, which you can go check that out at ninthlevelgames.com. And if you want to check out what I'm streaming, you could find me sometimes on the Bodahana cast, or you could find me on uh, Cast Gamers with the rest of these lovely folks. You can find me on Friday nights. I'm usually there, except for this short run, because coming up, I will be running Avatar Legends, which will be absolutely a blast.
Very nice. Very nice. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat. I will be keeping an eye on it. If I don't get to your question immediately, it may be because we're going to be covering that in a little bit, or I may just be waiting for a proper moment to, because I don't want to cut anybody off. So please, if you do have questions, put them in, and we will try and get to everybody's questions. Okay. So, uh, yeah, as Kinky just posted, thanks for hanging out, everyone. Really glad to see some people here. Okay, so let's start talking about what is a session zero, because a session zero could be a lot of different things. I mean, it's not all one thing. Different people run session zeros different ways. So, please, who would like to start off with what is a session zero for you? How do you see a session zero?
I mean, I can start. I have my session zeros work very differently depending on how I'm running a game or who I'm running who's my audience, because I do it therapeutically, I do it for fun, and I do it professionally. And all of those ways I do things a little differently, but I always do a few things almost exactly the same. And one of those things looks like, just meeting each other and trying to make sure that we feel comfortable with each other, right? Because if you're at a con and you're doing it as a professional way, you're coming into a situation where I don't know you and you don't know me. And that could be really uncomfortable to come sit down with a group of people and say, uh, hi, my name is Tim. I'm running a game for you today. Uh, it's nerve wracking, especially the first few times you do it. So, uh, having having an openness to be able to play with people is, I think, the first thing that you should have, and being able to create opportunities for people to come together and relate to each other, or just be able to joke a little bit in the beginning, is a part of like a session zero for me. But I think the most important things of a session zero are safety. You know, talking about safety and what that looks like for people, and making sure we're being as safe as possible, but also making sure we're going over what our expectations are at a table, because my expectations in a game may be very different than someone else's and what they're looking to facilitate at a game. And some people don't feel comfortable playing a game that others are trying to facilitate, and that's okay. And that's your time to get up and say, well, I don't think this is for me. Thank you. You know, and that's okay. And people need to be aware that that is okay.
Yeah, I can go next. In talking about the approach to session zero, it's important to set out and look at expectations and set up the safety. And one thing that I've noticed a lot in my approach with session zeros is about collaborating with everyone in this experience of whatever the game is. And for me, a lot of that comes out in world building, but just in that we are all coming together for this experience. We are all agreeing that we will be in exploring in whatever way. And so part of session zero is figuring out what it is that we're going to be exploring and how we're going to approach that, and setting up the mechanics to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Because when you go in expecting one thing and it turns out to be completely different, that might mean someone might want to step out. So having things set up so that they can is important and part of that session zero process.
I really enjoy games like Thirsty Sword Lesbians and Wander Home and other PBTA powered by the Apocalypse games, where your session zero is character creation, but you start with you can like even like Thirsty Sword Lesbians has the safety mechanics built right into the game. Wander Home, you read them as part of each first session of session zero, and you. I love making the characters and doing world building with people at session zero, are because that gives, I talked about this before, it gives them agency and gives them ownership of the game. And also I'm a spiritual director and I run spiritual discovery D&D groups and other games. And a lot of my session zero work, I meet with the players one-on-one as much as possible to design their character. And in those times I do like a one-on-one session zero with each player to find out what they're hoping to work on, you know, because if in spiritual direction gaming, you might put things intentionally into your character. So I want to talk about what they want in the character and what they're hoping to get out of it. But we also talk about safety and expectations at those sessions.
Yeah, one thing that I think we all
Hmm.
had in common here, and I didn't really touch on it because I knew the both of you were going to touch on it, is the world building, but also the relationship building. I think it's so
Mm.
important, not not for the character play, but for the relationship of the players at the table, because we all may not know each other. If we give ourselves an opportunity to have a relationship in the game, it creates a bond at the table that makes it easier for us to like play a game together.
Mhm. For myself, I played a lot I started playing in the mid to late 80s and played through the early 90s. And then I had a very large break in play because I just didn't have anybody who was running. And so I'd never even heard of a session zero until I got back into gaming and I went to a game at my local friendly neighborhood gaming store, and it started with some didn't know him at all, and his very first one he said, "Okay, what do you guys want? Do you want fighting? Do you want classic dungeon crawl? Do you want to solve puzzles?" And we as a group decided, "Oh, we want to be puzzle solvers." And he said, "Okay, let's build your characters. Come back next week. I'll have something for you." And I loved the concept of being able to be part of the creation of what we were playing. And it's funny, Menachem, I do the same thing as you. I don't do it for spiritual reasons, but I do one-on-one session zeros with each of the characters, and I do private consent in gaming stuff with them, review stuff with them. So if they're not comfortable having it all out, we can talk about what they want, what they don't want. And then I do one where I bring everybody together. They introduce their characters. They decide if they want any of their characters to already know each other, if they're going in as strangers. And so I actually do, I guess you call it session 0 and a session 0.5 before we play.
And that's a good point though to bring up, is that session 0 doesn't have to be once. Therapeutically, my session zeros sometimes last 5 sessions, where we're going over all the safety, we're going over world building, we're going over character creation, we're going over like what we want to work on personally, and trying to be as open as possible about some of this process really helps, and being able to have a longer session 0 makes it easier when you go into play, especially if you've never played a role-playing game before.
Yeah. And jumping up on that of when session 0 is in the process, because it's 0, it's at the beginning, but also could be in the middle if there's someone who's coming into the game. And so you have a new person that you are going through, here's what has been established, and what do you want to bring to this? Do you want to join this? And if you are, how can we help make that process as smooth as possible?
Yeah.
Okay. So so far what we've been talking about have been long-term groups, people that are going to play together for a while, and being able to devote an entire session to a session 0.
Yeah.
But how does that change? What does it more look like when you're talking about running a one shot at a store or at a convention? How can we keep some of this stuff in there with when you can't devote an hour to this because maybe you only have an hour or two to play?
One thing that I could bring up here, I think is a really important thing, is the safety stuff, right? No matter what I do, no matter who I'm running for, I always make sure that we have safety mechanics in play. And I usually do things like lines and veils because I feel that is sets grounds very well. But not everyone feels comfortable about saying their lines and veils in front of a bunch of people they've never met before, and that's okay. One way you can try to go around that is having a bunch of paper, have some paper, rip it all up in different strange pieces, pass them out, and have everyone write their lines and veils on it, collect it, shuffle them all up, and then pull them out one by one. You could read out what everyone's lines and veils are out without having to call anyone out to say, "Oh, this is their lines and veils. This is your lines and veils." Um, it's a safer way to make people feel like they're not putting themselves out there to strangers where they may not feel comfortable doing that.
I would just add, that's wonderful. I would just add, you just have to be authoritative and say, this is how it's going to work in 10 minutes, right? You just have to
Yeah.
say, we're going to have these safety mechanics and we're going to do this and we're going to, whatever it is you're going to do, you just have to condense it and say it with authority.
Yeah, session 0 and con play is very different than a home game or a therapeutic game or a spiritual game, or however you're running it more long term. You have to be more direct. You sometimes, depending on the con, you may only have an hour. You might have 2 hours. Maybe you have 4 hours, which is great. It's plenty of time to like have a good session 0. But if you only have like 2 hours, that's not really a lot of time to do a full session 0. So you kind of have to be very direct and like, we're gonna do things with an X card and some lines and veils, or maybe what is the one that Jack uses? the play. Yes, what is that one called?
Script change
Script change. Thank you. It
by
was
Bo
blanking
Traeger.
out in my mind for a minute. Script change is also a really good one. I just recently started to adopt that into some of my therapeutic games where we can pause a scene and say, hey, like, I want to talk about this 1 minute because I may not feel comfortable about this. And then if we feel like we're comfortable after we talk about it for a second, we can hit to do when you're playing with a bunch of strangers. Uh, one last thing I would like to add to it is making sure that you're presenting lines and veils, or whatever your comfort in a game is as the GM. I think it's very important because you're setting the tone for everyone else to be able to do that too. Um, very important.
Always
That
have an
was
example to go if no one's ready to go.
Yeah.
that was something that came up in the consent in gaming where we talked about using if you're using something like script change, doing that as the GM so
Yeah.
that you can show, okay, this is how this works and this is why it works, and you don't have to be afraid to do this because I'm doing it also.
One of the biggest things I always hear is, "I'm okay with everything." And then a player may try to do something like try to rape a character in a scene. And I'm not okay with that in my games. So I don't want anything to do with that stuff in my games. That's just not going to happen. So I always make things like that align, and I present this is how extreme a game can get sometimes, because we never know who we're playing with or where they're going to bring things. So we need to make sure we're clear, like, this is an extreme. So I'm going to give you extremes of what could happen in a game, but I'm also going to give you maybe some silly stuff that, like, I don't want to be I don't want to be covered in slime, right? That's a veil for me. We can talk about it, but I don't want to go into description about it.
Yeah, Jen posted in the chat that that they asked for triggers and big no buenos and found out that the barbarian hated spiders and had to rewrite half the session because the material that they were using used spiders almost exclusively.
Yeah.
That's something that they wouldn't have known, and this could have been a big I need to step away from the table for that player.
Well,
But
our biggest thing here is that we want to make this like inclusive for everyone. We want everyone to feel comfortable. This could be the thing that makes them never play a role playing game again, and we don't want to create that opportunity.
okay. So, anyone else have any suggestions for these mini session zeros that hasn't already been? I think you covered it really well, Timothy. Does anyone else have anything that they do? I've never run a session zero under those conditions, so I don't really have anything to really. Oh, and Jen said he said it's
Good job,
okay
Jen.
if it had 6 legs or 10 legs, but not 8.
I mean, that's fair. I don't like spiders either.
Yep. No, I'm not. I'm a huge no spiders person myself.
Do not play the game Edragor then. It's a great game, but it's big spiders.
I think that this is a good point too, though. Like, I don't like spiders in real life, but I'm okay with spiders in my games. And sometimes we need to know like how to explain what a line and veil is. Like, what is something I'm okay with playing with in an imaginary world, and what is something I'm not okay with, like crawling on my arm. Those are two very different things sometimes, and you got to
My
know how to clearly say that.
my thing is that yes, you can have spiders in your game. Do not flash a picture at me
Yes,
because
exactly. Yeah,
I will hyperventilate. I mean,
yeah,
I can't handle even pictures of spiders. So just tell me about them. I'm good.
yeah.
So for me, that's where the line is for me.
Mhm.
But you
Yeah,
can
and
have us fight spiders. I don't care about that. Just
I,
don't show me what we're fighting.
I agree. Don't tell me your gross spider stories. Like this, that's not allowed.
Yeah. And also with that of having a space so that someone can take back, oh, I thought this was a line and it's actually a veil, or vice
Yeah.
versa. I thought it was a veil and nope, it's a line. But having that space of, yeah, we can change it as we need to.
Jen, I love you, but could you please remove that picture? That's making it hard for me to keep an eye on the. Thank you. I know that's supposed to be a very cute spider, but even that can get me. So I am really definitely afraid of that.
So that was the next card moment.
Yeah, there's definitely a next card.
X card.
Yeah, I know. I know everyone thinks that spider's so cute, but it's really not for me. And thank you very much, Jen. I really appreciate it. Okay, so that's how you use next card if you didn't know.
That's the truth.
Yep. Okay. So, one of the things in our pre-conversations before this panel was talking about how a session 0 can assist with making strangers feel more comfortable with each other. So, can we take a moment to talk about how this whole thing with the session 0 can build group cohesion?
Menachem knows I'll jump in first every time if you let me. So please go first.
Jesse got something?
I can go I can go first. One of the things with that building that cohesion is, especially if it's a setting where it's a pre-built like world or system in that game, having that session 0 and bringing in the players together, or even if you're doing it like separately and working together, can have each person help building up some part of that world of, okay, so we're getting your backstory and we're making it fit in this world, or we're getting your character. How do we build? We have the character as they exist. What of this world